So I've got about 20 minutes to walk you through the entire story of Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell. Every game, every portrayal, every moment Sam Fisher probably should have quit but didn't. Sounds like a challenge, let's go. Splinter Cell is a stealth action series from Ubisoft. 6 games started in 2002, all of them following one guy, Sam Fisher. He works for a Black Ops branch of the NSA called Third Echelon, so classified that even admitting it exists is already a problem. No paper trails, no press conferences, no acknowledgement that any of it ever happened. Just a man in a black suit and a pair of green night vision goggles, and a mandate that basically reads, figure it out. It all starts in Georgia. Not the US state, the country. And the situation there has gotten bad fast. The Georgian president, Kombay Nikolads, has gone fully off the rails. He's ordered an invasion of neighbouring Azerbaijan, cut off all outside communication, and is essentially daring the international community to do something about it. Nobody really can, because nobody knows what's happening on the ground. Third Echelon does though. Third Echelon is a Black Ops branch in the NSA, so classified that even admitting it exists is already a problem. They had 2 CIA field agents embedded inside Georgia, feeding back intelligence. Then, those agents went dark. No check-in, no signal, nothing. So they send in Fisher. His job at this point sounds simple enough. Find the missing agents, figure out what Nikolads is actually doing, and get out clean. Fisher moves through Georgia under full blackout. No support, no backup. No one who can officially claim him if things go sideways. Standard Tuesday basically. What he finds is worse than a regional power grab. Nikolads hasn't just been playing Warlord, he's gotten his hands on something called an information bomb. Cyber weapon sophisticated enough to reach into US digital infrastructure and collapse it from the inside. Power grids, financial systems, communications. The kind of damage that doesn't need a single missile to be catastrophic. And the 2 missing CIA agents? Fisher finds them. They're dead. The rescue mission is over before it even started. Now it's damage control. Nikolads' plan is to detonate the cyber weapon and use the resulting chaos as cover while Georgia consolidates power in the region. It's a bold strategy for a man whose country has a fraction of the military resources he needs to survive a direct confrontation. But that's the point. You don't fight the United States head on, you blind it first. Fisher tracks the operation across multiple locations, Georgia, Myanmar, and eventually inside CIA headquarters itself. Yes, he breaks into his own government's buildings to pull files off a server. That's the job sometimes. Nobody said it wouldn't be weird. The key moment comes when Fisher finally corners Nikolads. There's no dramatic courtroom ending here. Nikolads is killed. The cyber weapon threat is neutralized, and Third Echelon closes the file on the whole thing like it never happened. Which, officially, it didn't. But here's what's worth noting about this first game. It establishes the template for everything that follows. Fisher isn't a hero in the traditional sense, he's a fix. A problem-solving instrument deployed by people who need results without accountability. The mission succeeds, the world doesn't know, and Fisher moves on to the next thing. The crisis is done, but the world doesn't get safer, it just finds new ways to fall apart. The next crisis comes out of Southeast Asia, and it's a different kind of threat. Less about infrastructure, more about biological catastrophe. Indonesia is the setting. A militant named Vernon Sof has linked up with a guerrilla leader named Suhardi Sudono, and together they've decided that the best way to make a political point is to scatter biological weapon canisters across the United States. Not detonate them immediately, just leave them there on a dead man's switch, tied directly to Sudono's continued survival. The logic being, as long as Sudono is alive and checking in on schedule, the canisters stay dormant. The moment he's killed or captured without a chance to disarm them, they release. It's called Pandora Tomorrow. The idea that killing him doesn't solve the problem, it starts a worse one. Which puts Third Echelon in an awkward position. They can't just eliminate the threat the way they normally would, because eliminating the threat is exactly what triggers it. For an organisation that typically solves problems by removing people quietly, this is genuinely inconvenient. So Fisher has to do this differently. He's not just hunting Sudono, he's tracking down each canister location individually while simultaneously figuring out how to neutralize the dead man's switch before making any move on Sedano himself. Two problems at once, with a bioweapon countdown ticking in the background. The mission takes him across East Timor, Jerusalem, and eventually Los Angeles. Each location peeling back another layer of the operation until Fisher has enough to act. When the switch is finally dealt with, Sedano is eliminated. Canisters neutralized, another file closed. But there's a pattern forming here. If you look at it, Fisher keeps getting sent into situations where the stakes are civilizational, and the solution is one man operating in the dark. No treaties, no diplomatic channels, no press briefings, just Fisher moving quietly through places he's never officially in. Chaos Theory is where the series steps up, not just in terms of threat level, but in terms of what it asks of Fisher personally. The geopolitical situation this time involves North Korea and Japan sitting on the edge of open conflict. Someone has been feeding both sides distorted intelligence, manipulating each nation into believing the other is about to make a move. Yet, if it goes hot, it doesn't stay regional for long. The source of the bad intelligence is an information broker named Zerkazi, working alongside a rogue Japanese admiral named Otomo. But they're not the top of the chain. Behind them is something called the ISDF, a shadow faction with Japan's defense establishment that wants war. Specifically because war would give Japan justification to fully remilitarize. They'd been manufacturing a conflict to serve an ideology. Fisher and his handler, Irving Lambert, work through it layer by layer. Lambert has been Fisher's voice in his ear across these missions. The calm, measured presence back at base while Fisher is the one physically crawling through server rooms and warships. They built something that functions like trust, even if neither of them would probably say that out loud. Fisher dismantles the ISDF's operation. The manufactured war gets stopped before it starts. But the key takeaway from Chaos Theory isn't the geopolitics, it's the weight that's starting to accumulate on Fisher. He's been doing this long enough now that the toll is visible. The missions keep getting more complex, the moral math keeps getting harder, and the gap between what Third Echelon asks and what a reasonable person would agree keep widening. Chaos Theory doesn't break Fisher, but it stretches him, and you can start to see, if you look closely, that there's a limit somewhere, a point past which the orders stop feeling like a duty and start feeling like something else. He's not there yet, but the next game is going to push him right off the edge. 2 near catastrophes handled, 2 files buried, but the next crisis isn't in Georgia or Indonesia or the Pacific. It's inside Fisher's own life, and that one doesn't come with a mission briefing. Sam Fisher has a daughter. Her name is Sarah, and in the opening of Double Agent, she's killed by a drunk driver. That's it. No enemy plot, no foreign actor, no shadowy organisation to dismantle, just a car, a bad decision, and a phone call that changes everything. Fisher, who has spent years absorbing the worst the world throws at him without visibly breaking, essentially goes dark inside. He shows up to work, but the lights are off. Third Echelon, to their credit, or maybe not, depending on how you look at it, doesn't pull him from active duty. Instead, they hand him the ugliest assignment of the entire series. They want him to go to prison on purpose. The plan is to get Fisher arrested and embedded inside a domestic terrorist organisation called John Brown's Army, JBA for short. These aren't foreign actors, they're American citizens operating on US soil with a specific grievance against the American government and a plan to do something about it. Third Echelon needs eyes on the inside, and Fisher, in his current emotional state, is apparently convincing enough to pass as someone who's given up on the system. Which honestly, isn't that far from the truth. Fisher goes in. He earns the trust of the JBA's leadership slowly, doing what undercover work requires, which is to say, doing enough bad things that the people around him believe he's one of them. All while feeding what he can back to Lambert and Third Echelon on the outside. JBA's leader is a man named Emile Dufresne, and here's where the situation gets genuinely uncomfortable. Dufresne isn't a cartoon villain, he's methodical, ideologically committed, and this is the part that matters. He actually starts to trust Fisher. Not just tolerate him, but trust him, which means every piece of intelligence Fisher passes along, every moment of sabotage he commits from the inside, carries a personal cost that earlier missions didn't. Dufresne's plan is to hit multiple US cities using stolen NSA codes to trigger coordinated attacks. The scale is significant. The window to stop it is closing. And then it gets worse. Lambert is captured. The details of how it happened aren't the point. What matters is what comes next. Fisher is faced with a choice that the series has been building towards without fully announcing it. To prevent Lambert from being tortured into giving up intelligence that would compromise ongoing operations, Fisher has to make a call. He kills Lambert himself, his handler, the man who has been in his ear across every mission, the closest thing to a constant that this job has ever given him. Fisher does it because the alternative is worse, because that's the math Third Echelon trained him to do. And it turns out the math still works, even when it's unbearable. The mission gets finished, the JBA's plan is stopped, Dufresne is dealt with. But Fisher walks away from Third Echelon after that. Not dramatically, no speech, no confrontation, he just stops. The organisation that handed him impossible orders for years, that sent him into a prison and asked him to become someone else while grieving his daughter, has now cost him the last person he actually trusted. There's a limit, and Double Agent found it. Fisher goes dark, and the next time we see him, he's not working for anyone. 4 years pass, and Fisher is in Malta. Off the grid, off the books, off the radar of every agency that ever claimed to know where he was. He's not running, he's just done. Or at least that's what it looks like from the outside. What's actually happening is that Fisher has been sitting with a theory, a bad one. The kind that, if true, changes the entire shape of everything that came before. He thinks Third Echelon had Sarah killed. Not the drunk driver, Third Echelon, his own organisation. The idea being that someone inside used her death to destabilise him, to push him into the emotional state that made him useful for the Double Agent operation. A grieving father with nothing to lose is a very convincing undercover asset. And Fisher, who has spent his entire career recognising when situations have been engineered, has had 4 years alone to think about whether his grief was engineered too. So he starts pulling threads, quietly, methodically, the only way he knows how. Those threads lead him to a man named Andrew Coben, black market arms dealer, operating out of Malta, connected to enough shadowy transactions that his name keeps appearing at the edges of things Fisher is looking into. Fisher finds him and takes his operation apart, and when he finally gets Coben in front of him and gets the truth out, it lands somewhere Fisher wasn't ever expecting. Sarah is alive. She faked her death, not because of Third Echelon, to protect herself from the kind of people who'd use her as leverage against her father, which, given everything, is a completely reasonable thing to do. Fisher has been living inside a wrong assumption for years, and the moment it collapses, the entire landscape shifts. But there's no time to process it, because something else is already in motion. Third Echelon has been compromised from the inside. Not a foreign asset, not a mole feeding intel to a rival, an internal coup run by the agency's own director, a man named Tom Reed. Reed has used Third Echelon's infrastructure, its resources, and its access to stage something that would have seemed completely insane as a premise in the first game, an assassination attempt on the President of the United States. Reed isn't working against America from the outside. He's dismantling it from a position of institutional trust, which is, if you think about it, the most Splinter Cell way a villain could possibly operate. Fisher comes back in, not for Third Echelon. That relationship is finished. But because stopping a presidential assassination is one of those things that transcends personal history. He links up with his old colleague Victor Costa, and eventually coordinates directly with the president's own security apparatus to get ahead of Reed's plan. Reed is stopped, the assassination doesn't happen, and then the president does something that reframes the entire series in a single decision. Third Echelon, the organisation that shaped Sam Fisher, that defined 2 decades of his professional life, that gave him Lambert and then took him away, is shut down, permanently. Too corrupt, too unaccountable, too far off the books, even by the standards of people who operate off the books. In its place, the president creates Fourth Echelon. Same mission, theoretically cleaner structure, and Fisher isn't just an operator this time, he's in charge. The man who spent years being the instrument is now holding it. 4th Echelon operates out of a mobile airborne command center called the Paladin, essentially a flying operations base that keeps Fisher and his team off any fixed grid. It's a practical setup for an organization that officially doesn't exist, and it signals right away that this version of the mission is going to look different from what came before. Fisher's team this time includes Anna Grimsdottir, running technology and intelligence. She's 3rd Echelon's long-time tech analyst, the person who's kept Fisher's gear functional and his data feeds clean across most of his career. And she's been in his ear almost as long as Lambert was. Charlie Cole handles the hacking side. Isaac Briggs is field support, a capable operator with his own background and motivations that occasionally put him sideways with Fisher. The threat they're facing is a coalition of international operatives who call themselves the Engineers. Their operation is called the Blacklist, a countdown of escalating attacks against American interests, military and civilian, designed to force a specific outcome: the withdrawal of US troops from foreign soil. Each attack is a message. Each deadline is real. The Engineers' leader is a man named Majid Sadiq, patient, organised and genuinely difficult to get ahead of. He's not reactive, he plans several moves out, and every time 4th Echelon moves to shut down one of Blacklist's attacks, Sadiq has already accounted for the response. Fisher works through the countdown methodically, dismantling each attack as it comes, while trying to close the distance on Sadiq himself. It's the same structure as before. It's the same structure as earlier missions, one man cutting through layers of conspiracy. But now Fisher has a team, a chain of command he actually runs, and the full weight of institutional responsibility sitting on him for the first time. The final reveal is the one that makes Blacklist feel like a true Splinter Cell story. Sadiq wasn't simply a radical operating from ideology. He was trained and funded by a shadow program inside the US government called the Blacklist Intercept Program, an international operation that created the very threat that was supposedly designed to monitor. The Engineers exist because someone inside the system built them. Fisher exposes it, Sadiq is neutralized, 4th Echelon proves it can function without becoming what it replaced, for now. Sam Fisher ends this series as a man who's outlasted every institution that tried to define him. 3rd Echelon used him, Double Agent broke him, Conviction gave him a second chance, and Blacklist handed him a responsibility that somehow he carried. The story isn't over. A Netflix anime series and full remake are both in the works, which means Fisher isn't done yet. If you want more breakdowns like this, subscribe, drop your favourite game in the comments, and we'll see if we can get to it.